This is a rental house that I bought when I was 22 years old. Hey, what's up guys? It's Steven. Now, I love it when successful people share their stories about how they get started. I find it very interesting because I feel like I can maybe use it in my own life, helping me getting started in whatever I'm doing or push me further ahead. So in this video, I'm gonna share how I bought my first rental property at 22 years old, why I got into real estate, the method or process that I got into real estate or how I discovered it, and pretty much everything else about how I kind of got into this business at 22 years old, which is obviously very young. So when I was a sophomore in college, I was pretty much trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Maybe by that time, most people are supposed to have it figured out. I sure as heck didn't. I would say that probably a lot of people don't as well. But I was going to college and I wasn't overly fulfilled or satisfied with my college experience. And I felt that I was kind of like drifting a little bit. I always knew that I wanted to own my own business. And the reason I wanted to own my own business was I wanted to be really wealthy and I wanted to have a legacy to leave to my eventual kids. And I really don't think I would have been satisfied and fulfilled by just going and working a 9-to-5 job for 40 years of my life, retiring, and all I have to show for it is a retirement. To me, that's just not something that got me excited and going. And I didn't want to spend my life doing that. I wanted to have enough money that I could go wherever I wanted to go, whenever I wanted to go, that I could buy pretty much anything that I wanted and didn't have to worry about money. So that's pretty much the mentality that I had when I was a sophomore in university. There's only one problem with this little idea that I had. I didn't really have any passions. I wasn't super into anything. So how do you start a business if you don't have a passion? If you really like electricity, then maybe you become an electrician. If you really like welding, well, maybe you become a welder and have a welding business. But it wasn't really like that for me. Although there was one thing that I did have quite a bit of interest in, and I did have some things going for me. I had an investment portfolio of stocks, and it was pretty sizable for my age. Now, I really didn't know a whole bunch of things about stocks on how to value companies or anything like that. I had just been continuously putting the little bit of money that I made every year into it, and all of a sudden I had a pretty decent portfolio. Really, where this ties in is like I was sitting at my grandmother's house one night thinking about this dilemma. How am I gonna start a business? What is my passion? Blah, 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 blah. And I thought about that stock portfolio and I thought, okay, you know, investors tend to be pretty wealthy. Well, maybe I should just become an investor. Even though I didn't know anything about it, that's pretty much how I decided I wanted to get into investing. Not very glamorous, and yes, I get it, it's dorky and probably incredibly naive. But sometimes in life to get started, you've got to be naive. So recognizing that I didn't know jack diddly squat about investing, I said, let me study the best investors that I can possibly think of or find and see what their keys to success are. Ultimately, this led me to Warren Buffett, the legendary investor who's made just a crazy amount of money. And so I spent the next 12 months studying Warren Buffett and his mentors, reading all the books that his mentor had written and listening to him in his annual reports, and I figured out their magic formula. And it's honestly incredibly simple and not that exciting. It's really good assets, in their case companies or businesses. They use leverage then, and then they give it time. Now, it took me 12 months to figure that out. Maybe that's too long, but I figured it out. And at the end of 12 months, the problem that I saw there, or what got me disheartened a little bit, was you can't really use leverage in the stock market. I didn't have enough money to go buy a private business. At least I didn't know if I had enough money to do that. And to use leverage in the stock market is honestly not really a good idea, especially if you're a long-term investor. So I was kind of left with this, oh boy, what do I do now moment. I've spent 12 months of my life working really hard, studying these guys, figured out their formula, and now I'm at like this bottleneck and I don't know how to implement the formula that I figured out. Until I figured out, wow, you know, I could probably substitute the whole buying a business thing for buying real estate, which is basically a smaller business and a much more simple business. And that's how I got introduced to real estate. Not that exciting, right? There was only one problem. I didn't know anything about real estate. So now, after spending 12 months on that, I had to figure out real estate. So now we're at the part of the video that I probably should talk about how I went to learn how to calculate the numbers of real estate and then how I went about looking for the real estate. So calculating the numbers without me getting into too much of the weeds or the details of doing it, I'll make a video on underwriting later, was pretty straightforward because I had a finance background. The problem that I ran into, or the tricky part, was in theory I know how to do it, but in practice, in getting good enough to actually have the confidence to pull the trigger and know that you're right is much more difficult. So my theory to get over this and to get myself into real estate was to download 3 apps. It was Realtor.com, Zillow, and I think Trulia was maybe an app as well. And every day I'd go there and I'd look at properties. Several of them every single day. So I'll just show you what I did. Realtor.com is really where I kind of went to most of the days. So I jump onto Realtor.com and I'm in Northwest Ohio. So there is Toledo is the major city. And then you have the other cities like Maumee, Perrysburg, and Bowling Green. So since I was closest to Bowling Green, I jump on here and I'd look always for multifamily. Sometimes for single family just to have an understanding of what's out there, but I wanted to be in multifamily real estate. The reason for this is because my theory was more doors is safer, more doors is better, and more doors is more scalable. So I'd always look at multifamily. But in these smaller towns like Bowling Green, Perrysburg, Maumee, there wasn't a bunch. And so getting started, what I wanted to do was just have volume. And what I mean by volume is I wanted to see a lot of properties. And I'd want to click into one, and hopefully they had a lot of pictures. And so basically what I'd do is I'd look at all these pictures on as many properties as I could to kind of get an understanding of what they looked like, what the feeling was, what the quality and condition was, basis the price, and then different locations of it. How many square footage was it? Was it a duplex, quadplex, or a triplex? And then to do my numbers and calculations and practice underwriting, I go down to this description part, I'd read more, and a lot of times they tell you how much it is. Fully rented duplex at $750 per unit. So that means you're getting $1,500 a month, and then you can go do your calculation. Your calculation is, top line minus your expenses gives you your bottom line. And I do that again and again and again. Now the reason I do that is, like I said, to get better at calculating it myself, but I create all this data. And the data is, I know what the market looked like in the area that I was working in. So what was an average return look like for the properties that we were buying? And the reason that's important is because even if I'm willing to take an 8% return and I can get a property that will give me an 8% return, maybe my local market wants a 16% return for the same price. So I didn't want to overpay and then not be able to offload this property later if I needed to. And so that kind of made me very, very nervous. And so what happened was I got into this analysis paralysis for probably 8 months, just going back and forth and doing the same process, going on to Realtor.com every day, looking up the new properties. And eventually I started making phone calls and talking to real estate agents or brokers or whoever, but I never pulled the trigger because I was afraid. I was afraid of making a mistake, of buying something that wasn't right, of not making money, or God forbid losing money. Because at that point I had this scarcity mentality that I thought if I lost money, I didn't have that much and I could never make it again. Pretty dumb, very dumb, but it had me gripped. So I spent 12 months figuring out the formula, and then I've spent 6 or 8 months actually figuring out how to value the assets and the asset part of the formula. And I can't pull the trigger. And it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating to not have the confidence. But sometime during this process, my college roommate and best friend at the time, who grew up on and around a farm, or around a farm I should say, wanted to buy some farm ground, and there was an auction coming up. And even though I wasn't successful in my real estate endeavors, I still wanted to support my friend and go to the auction and be there and watch him buy some property. Now, this auction, or this ground, actually sold in 3 lots. There was 2 lots of farm ground and then a lot with a house on it. And the house was a rental house. I wasn't interested in single family rental. I was looking for multifamily, which I've already said, but I really didn't think about it until the auction started. And my friend was winning the land that he wanted to win, and it came time to sell the house, and the house was being rented for $900 a month, and it was only being bid to $30,000. I said, dude, this is way too cheap. And something inside of me, I just said, I just need to do it. And I started bidding and bidding and bidding, and then ultimately I bought it for $46,000. For me, it couldn't have been easier, and it's exactly what I needed at the moment because the numbers worked out very, very well, and it's honestly kind of a no-brainer deal. And I'm glad it worked out that way. Finally, I owned my very first rental property after, 19 months probably of knowing that I wanted to be in this and just doing all of that legwork, knowing what good calculations look like, knowing that I wanted to be into real estate, knowing that this is what I wanted, and knowing how to do the math. It took a long time, but finally I caught a break and got lucky, honestly, and that's how I bought the first rental property. It might be insignificant, but I would not be where I am today without that first rental property, because it gave me the momentum and the confidence. And so I think the couple takeaways from my story is that I love, I started off the video saying I love hearing stories of how other successful people got started. And I like those stories because it reminds me that it's possible for me to be successful as well. And I want to see, is there anything that I can learn from their success that I can use in my own success? The other thing, in terms of tactical things, like if you're just getting started, do what I did. Use the formula. I did all the legwork to figure out Buffett's magical formula, which isn't really that magical, and probably other people have figured it out too. Use that. Figure out, I need good assets, I need some leverage, and just give it a lot of time. Other things, if you really want to be in real estate, go look at real estate every single day. Apps like Realtor.com make it easier than ever to have access to them, to deals, and look at things. Go to LoopNet if you want commercial properties. Not necessarily to say that you're going to buy it off of LoopNet, but just to practice underwriting it and learn. The more you do, the more you learn. And ultimately, you need to be flexible. Like, you're going to probably struggle with confidence. Maybe. I did, for sure. And the more you do it, the more you get better at it, the more confidence you have, and then ultimately, you're just going to have to pull the trigger. Now, the opportunity that actually comes your way might not be what you originally thought it would be. I thought I was going to get multifamily, and I had to start with a single family home. But it's a great opportunity. If there's a good opportunity that fits 99% of what you're looking for, pull the trigger. Anyways, I hope this video finds you well, finds you good in the new year, and I hope you got some value out of my story about how I got started with my first rental property. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to this video so that I'm encouraged to keep putting more of these up and get better and better, and hopefully we can meet sometime. See ya.